Minister, congratulations on your first budget. Thanks for being here today. The deficit, it is bizarre for me to say a $78.3 billion deficit is on the lower end of projections. But here it is, right around in the mid-ground of where a lot of estimates were. A lot of people look at this, though, and they hesitate to use the same words as generational and transformational that you and the Prime Minister have used. I mean,
let me comment on both of them.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I would say it's not only how much you borrow, but why. I think the budget answered that question because people who are watching at home wants to see if you're borrowing to spend, it is something. If you're borrowing to invest, that's how you grow the economy. That's why we said by 28, 29, the borrowing will be for investment, and that should give confidence to Canadians. People understand when you go to the grocery, you spend. When you buy a house, you invest. And to your second point, I would say that when you look at what's generational, well, I would say, listen, I preside, because Canada is the presidency of the G7, I look at what Germany did. Germany, the largest economy in Europe. Look at their infrastructure investment, which is generational as well. If you compare what Canada has been doing today, it is generational because in our nation history, you're talking about almost $500 billion on a cash basis over the next 5 years in order to grow the economy. So for me, the generational aspect, you have to see what we've done in Canada. But if you compare that also to other G7 nations, you would see that Canada is on a very strong footing.
But the other G7 nations aren't as exposed to the whims of the U.S. president as Canada is, just because of the entanglement, of our economies. And I'm speaking with people like Randall Bartlett with Desjardins, who were inside the budget lockup today, and they're not convinced that the measures in this budget will unlock the sort of capital of $100 billion a year that you kind of need to hit the election target, and certainly the $1 trillion that you highlight, I think, on page 58 of the budget, where that you say this is what it will unleash. So I mean, what reassurances do you give to the skeptics that the plan will actually deliver that kind of jolt?
Well, I would say this is a pivotal change in our nation history. Investing in capital, investing in infrastructure, housing, investing in productivity and competitiveness. I mean, again, you always have to look at what the international, validators would say as well. You look at the International Monetary Fund, and I was just in Washington with them. They look at Canada and say, well, Canada's made the right choice. If you want to grow the economy, where do you invest? Where do you have the highest multiplier? Housing, infrastructure, competitiveness. So I would say, let's believe in Canada. That's in my speech, say, I believe in Canada. I'm confident in Canada. This is a moment where we cannot rely on our old way of doing. That's why I say it's a generational shift. It's an investment budget. That's why when we presented both the capital and the operating spending, it gives a better clarity. And I think I would even say this is what they're recommending to other countries in the world because you provide clarity. But I think there's something for Canadians to recognize themselves in it. You know, we know that affordability is the first concern. We know also when it comes to healthcare, it's the first time, and I see my good friend Lisa Raitt, which was with you as well. I think for federal government to say with provinces, we're going to go with you 50-50 to rebuild some of the hospitals, the clinics, and the health facility, you're talking about $10 billion. You know, $5 billion federal with the province. I mean, it's touching what needs to be the super deduction as well. I think, honestly, Canada will be more competitive than the United States on a tax basis.
So for the super deduction, for people just watching this, there's a series of measures, some that Chrystia Freeland had in the fall economic statement in 2024 to allow for an immediate write-down of equipment purchases and productivity upgrades. You've added to that the business, the building, excuse me, for manufacturing and processing. There's also an incentive in there for natural gas. The higher the credit is based on the low level of your emissions as a way to grow things. This is designed to reduce uncertainty and de-risk things for businesses so that they can have confidence to make those investments. But can that really get the traction you're counting on with the trade situation unsettled and unresolved
right now? Just look at LNG Canada, what they've done and what they're looking, for example, at phase 2. I mean, we've already been able to attract significant investment in our country. And what we say it's going to be a catalyst, because if you do a mine, let's take an example for people watching at home. If you do a mine and you have these tax incentives, well, first the private sector will say, okay, if Canada is the most competitive place, if I have to do a mining project, Canada becomes very attractive, the first and last mile, the critical mineral tax credit. Then obviously, if you do a mine, there might be federal support, maybe not, but you may also have provincial support, because think about the Ring of fire where you say, well, we need to have the access road, we need to do things. Then you would have municipalities because obviously you need to build a community around. So what we say is that this is a catalyst for growth because by going in with 450 billion, obviously you have to see after that the private sector coming in, the province coming in, the municipalities coming in, First Nations coming. So it's really that kind of catalyst where we needed to change our approach and how we see this country. We have been reliant on one particular market. We need to become more resilient. Uncertainty has been, affecting a lot of business investment, and now we want to move from uncertainty to prosperity. And I think the message, and I know you have more questions, but I would say the message that is coming out is that Canada will be competitive. Canada will attract investment. Canada is serious in what we want to do. And at the same time, we're going to reduce our operating expenses. Sure. Because I appreciate what you said. Canadians would see the borrowing, but if it's borrowing to invest, folks understand that at home. When you buy a house, normally most of people would take a mortgage because obviously that's an investment. Sure. So by shifting that, that's where you can catalyze these investments.
But you talk about reducing the operating expenses, and that is essentially there's no big, the rate of direct program expense was over 8 percentage points for the past decade. Is now less than 1 percentage point.
That's good news.
16,000 jobs lost this year, full-time equivalent positions, and up to 40,000 over a 4-year horizon here. You've heard the persistent criticism of government that ambition is one thing, execution is another. CRA is going through execution and delivery problems based on staffing levels, and here you have a global staffing reduction plan for the government. So how do you execute and deliver when you're cutting your workforce by 10%?
Well, I'd say you're coming back to more sustainable level. Let's look at the trajectory. You cannot look that in absolute term. You have to look in relative term, where we were before COVID, where we're going now. We say we're going to be compassionate. A lot of that, by the way, is going to be done to normal attrition. I see people on the panels who have seen these things. There's a normal attrition. Yeah, people who decide to leave.
But it's still a capacity reduction, right?
Well, but I mean, we live in a different world. Now we have tools that we didn't have before. Think about artificial intelligence. I was at the CRA. I'm the one who demanded a 100-day plan. I went to a call center, David, and saw that it's not the people, it's the technology they have is really outdated. So if you give them better technology, they'll offer better services to people. So it's really a different way of looking, the tools, the processes, the number of things. I want to make the tax code more efficient as well. That's why we took some measures. But really, this is about an investment budget. It's betting on Canada. And we're going to be okay. I would want to say for people watching at home, we're going to be okay. There's a lot of headwinds. Families are feeling it in the fields, on the shop floor, at home. But what I want to say to them, we're going to be okay. We're going to invest in ourselves. We're going to build the economy. We're going to be less reliant on one particular trading partner. And in that, for Canada, I think it's a good thing because you have to think not only for ourselves, but other generations that come. People have made these big investments before. Look at the St. Lawrence Seaway and look how much it costs in constant dollar and how much it attracts in terms of trade today. So it's kind of our gift also to the next generation.
Okay, but the next generation is going to get $78 billion in deficit this year, $65 billion, getting down to about $57 billion by 2029, 2030. By then, the economic picture looks better, but the spend is still large. There's $81 billion in defense spending over the next 5 years. If you commit to the operational balance that you've committed to as a new fiscal anchor, and you have all of this money on tax incentives and on investment and on defense spending, the ability of the federal government to expand programs or to partner with provinces to expand programs looks severely curtailed over the life of this financial projection.
Well, I would say because you're not taking into account, one thing we have not put in the number is the impact of that growth in the numbers. Because like we said, if you have 450 billion that will enable $1 trillion, obviously your tax base is going to grow, your economy is growing. And I would say on the social program, I mean, we've doubled the transfer on social program. Look at childcare, look at farmer care, look at the programs we have put in place recently, and you would say farmer care. You look at all that and you say, okay, we've been there for provinces, we've been there for people, we've been there for workers. And by the way, just on the point you said, the 78.3, which is the deficit this year, 75% of that was for two things. One was for sovereignty, And I would say people would agree that you have to defend our sovereignty. And the second one was around affordability, because we needed to respond to the tariff response. At the same time, we needed to give a hand to families. So I would say, we have to put things in perspective. We're facing, like I said, the speed, scope, and scale of change. It's not just in Canada. I wish you would be at the G7 with me when I go there. But you would see people say, this is not just impacting Canada. It's impacting our colleagues around the world. What's going on is, I would say, akin to what we've seen in 1940. It's a completely reshape of the world economic order. But, we are strong. We have the fiscal capacity. We have talent. We have resources. We have energy. We have trade agreements. But now we just need to give, that supercharged growth in our country. We're all going to be better.
Do you have the votes as a final point? The Conservatives said too much debt, not enough in there for them to vote for it. It is not good for the next generation. The New Democrats have some concerns but haven't made up their mind. The Bloc do not like it at first blush, though Chris d'Entremont did resign from the Conservative caucus today because he's thinking about voting for your budget. Are you confident you can get this passed? And if not, can you win an election on this plan?
Well, I would say, people should, members of parliament in the opposition should think twice before making their choice, because this is a budget for Canadians. There is something for Canadians in that. And I think people would not understand with what's going on in the time. This is not the time for political games. The moment is, we need to seize the moment. And I would think Canadians would not really understand, because there's something for them. What are you going to say to people who say, well, healthcare facilities, so you'd be against helping to build healthcare facilities? You'd be against building more homes? You'd be against to defend our sovereignty? You'd be against more productivity? And I mean, that's the choice. So I think that people will have to think very hard, because it's not to me they need to respond. It's to the people, their constituent. And I think my message to Canada, we're going to be all right. But obviously, when it comes to defending our communities, what I said in the House today, I mean, honestly, everyone who's in this House, I hope, and I believe that everyone is there to say, yes, we need to do that together. Now, that's why I would say this is a budget that there should be no surprise in what we said. We said we would be doing generational investment in housing and infrastructure, in our defense, collective defense, and to put our growth back on track. So there's no surprises. We got the mandate, and I think people watching at home would be looking in the way to say what's going on in Ottawa. If a plan to grow the economy, to build better community, to build safer communities, that's what Canadians want. That's what we delivered.
Okay. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne, we've gone way over time. I want to thank you. It's a busy day. We appreciate you coming here. That is the Minister of Finance who just delivered the very first budget of his career, the first of the Carney government.